Air India Flight 182 was an Air India flight operating on the Montreal, Canada-London, UK Delhi, India route. On 23 June 1985, the Boeing 747-237B serving the flight was destroyed by a bomb at an altitude of 31,000 feet. It crashed into the Atlantic Ocean while in Irish airspace. It was the first bombing of a 747 jumbo jet. A total of 329 people were killed, including 268 Canadian citizens, 27 Britons, and 24 Indians. The majority of the victims were Canadian citizens of Indian ancestry. The incident was the largest mass murder in Canadian history. It was the deadliest terrorist attack involving an airplane until the September 11, 2001, attacks. It is also the deadliest aircraft bombing. The bombing of Air India 182 occurred at the same time as the Narita airport bombing. Investigators believe that the two plots were linked, and that those responsible were aiming for a double bombing. However, the bomb at Narita exploded before it could be loaded onto the plane. Canadian law enforcement determined that the main suspects in the bombing were members of the Sikh militant group Baba Khalsa. The attack is thought to have been a retaliation against India for the operation carried out by the Indian Army Operation Blue Star to flush out several hundred Sikh militants who were within the premises of the Golden Temple and the surrounding structures ordered by the Indian government, headed by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Though a handful of members were arrested and tried, Inderjeet Singh Rayat, a Canadian national, remains the only person convicted of involvement in the bombing. Singh pleaded guilty in 2003 to manslaughter. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for building the bombs that exploded aboard Flight 182 and at Narita. The subsequent investigation and prosecution lasted almost 20 years and was the most expensive trial in Canadian history, costing nearly $130 million Canadian dollars. The Governor-General in Council in 2006 appointed the former Supreme Court Justice John Major to conduct a commission of inquiry. His report was completed and released on 17 June 2010. It concluded that a cascading series of errors by the Government of Canada, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the Canadian Security Intelligence Service had allowed the terrorist attack to take place. Background and motivation. Most official accounts place responsibility for the attack on Sikh extremism. Tensions between Sikh and Hindus and other groups date to before the partition of British India in 1947. The Sikh communities suffered much death, violence and hardship following the partition, as did other religious groups. The partition created Pakistan and India. The state of Punjab was divided between India and Pakistan. Later, the Khalistan movement arose to create another Sikh homeland in the Punjab region of India and Pakistan. It referred to the 19th-century Sikh Empire. During the 1970s, during and following the widespread deaths and social disruption due to the Bangladesh Liberation War of 1971, many new Sikh refugees emigrated to Canada. These included men who became the leaders and members of the Baba Khalsa, such as Talwinder Singh Parmar, Ajay Singh Bagri, Ripudaman Singh Malik and Inderjeet Singh Rayat. By the 1980s, the area around Vancouver, British Columbia had become the largest centre of Sikh population outside India. They carried with them rivalries and sectarian tensions from India and Pakistan. The Baba Khalsa in its current form developed from the violent clash between the rival Nirankari and Akhand Kirtana Jatha sects on the festival of Vaisakhi in India on 13 April 1978. Where 13 Sikhs were killed. The founders of this Panthik group vowed to avenge the deaths of Sikhs. Talwinder Singh Parmar led the militant wing of AKJ, which became the Baba Khalsa, to punish the Nirankaris. They had been cleared by the Punjab government of wrongdoing. On 24 April 1980, Gurbakh Khan Singh, the barber of the Nirankaris, was killed. Baba Khalsa claimed responsibility for the assassination. On 19 November 1981, Parmar was among the militants who escaped from a shootout in which 2 Punjab police officers were gunned down outside the house of Amarjit Singh, Nihang in Ludhiana district. This added to the notoriety of Baba Khalsa and its leader. He went to Canada. In 1982, India issued a warrant for Parmar's arrest for 6 charges of murder stemming from the killing of the police officers. India notified Canada that Parmar was a wanted terrorist in 1981 and asked for his extradition in 1982. Canada denied the request in July 1982. After an Interpol alert, Parmar was arrested while attempting to enter Germany. Germany chose to handle the case locally rather than hand him over to India. Parmar went on a hunger strike to win his religious right to wear a turban and have vegetarian meals in the Dusseldorf jail. After India received information that Parmar had made assassination threats against Indira Gandhi, they found that Germany had decided that the evidence was weak. They had expelled Parmar and released him to Canada on June 1984 after nearly a year in jail. On 3–6 June 1984, the Khalistan movement was sparked into action as Prime Minister of India Indira Gandhi ordered Operation Blue Star, the storming of the Golden Temple. Militants led by Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale had amassed weapons in the Sikh temple. The militants demanded that Sikhs not be treated as second-class citizens in India and demanded equality through changes in the Indian constitution, or otherwise the creation of a Sikh state. Khalistan. Some independent estimates of the death toll of the operation ran as high as 1,500 civilian deaths, which led to an uproar among Sikhs worldwide. On 31 October 1984, Indira Gandhi was assassinated by 2 of her Sikh bodyguards. In retaliation, 1984 anti-Sikh riots, guided by certain Indian National Congress members, killed thousands of Sikhs in India. Shortly after Blue Star, Parmar visited the auto mechanic and electrician Inderjeet Singh Rayat, who lived in Duncan, British Columbia, a small community north of Victoria on Vancouver Island. He asked him to construct a bomb. Rayat later claimed he had no idea what it would be used for. Rayat asked various people in the community about dynamite, saying he wanted to remove tree stumps on his property. Rayat also discussed explosives with a co-worker, while expressing anger at the Indian government and Indira Gandhi in particular. Later that year, Ajay Singh Bagri accompanied Parmar as his right-hand man in the armed struggle against the Indian government. Bagri worked as a forklift driver at a sawmill near the town of Kamloops. He was known as a powerful preacher in the Indo-Canadian community. The pair travelled across Canada to rally Sikhs to the cause of avenging the attack on the Golden Temple. They used the meetings as fundraisers for Baba Khalsa. A former head priest in Hamilton testified that Bagri said, "The Indian government is our enemy, the same way the Hindu society is our enemy." Bagri told the congregation, "Get your weapons ready so we can take revenge against the Indian government." Bagri called for action. "We are slaves in Punjab. Our brothers and sisters are being killed and so we have to stand up for ourselves. Nobody's going to help us. So to make our own state we need an army, we need ammunition, we need rifles to fight with the Indian government to make our own state." Khalistan. Bagri's speech on 28 July 1984, the founding convention of the World Sikh Organization was held at Madison Square Garden in New York City. The WSO's constitution was committed to diplomacy and non-violence, and it said the organization would strive for an independent Sikh homeland by peaceful means. Though Parmar was blocked at the border, Bagri gave an hour-long speech at the convention. He said, "Until we kill 50,000 Hindus, "We will not rest before an enraged crowd of 4,000 people." This statement was quoted against him at his later trial. Bagri defended hijackers who had forced the hated Indian government into negotiations with the Sikh leadership, and was critical of Gandhian non-violence. "We are to die in the battlefield, fighting, by sacrificing ourselves. To die such a death, which is the mission of the Khalsa, is our religion." Militant Kashmiri and Afghan rebels also were invited to the rally. An Afghan mujahideen agreed, "We will bring together all movements against India because India allies itself with the Soviet Union." A professional translator testified that Bagri's speech in Punjabi had been distorted by failing to understand its context within Sikh history and literature. He denied that Bagri had urged Sikhs to take revenge against all Hindus. He conceded that Bagri was trying to inflame passions and arouse national pride. Plot preparations. In late 1984, at least 2 informers reported to authorities on the first abortive plot to bomb Air India Flight 182, which flew out of Montreal's Mirabel International Airport at that time. In August 1984, the known criminal Jerry Boudreau claimed that Talwinder Parmar showed him a suitcase stuffed with $200,000. Payment to plant a bomb. He decided, "I had done some bad things in my time, done my time in jail, but putting a bomb on a plane, not me." I went to the police in September, in an attempt to get his sentence for theft and fraud reduced. Harmail Singh Gruel of Vancouver told the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police of the plot to bomb the flight from Montreal. Both reports were dismissed as unreliable. The moderate Sikh Ujjal Dosanjh had spoken out against violence by Sikh extremists. In retaliation, he was attacked on February 1985 by an assailant wielding an iron bar. His skull was broken and he required 80 stitches in his head. On 5 March 1985, the CSIS obtained a court order to place Parmar under surveillance for 1 year, just 3 months before the bombing. Although the Baba Khalsa had not yet been officially banned, the affidavit stated, "It is a Sikh terrorist group now established in Canada, has claimed responsibility for more than 40 assassinations of moderate Sikhs and other persons in the Punjab," and penned its name to threatening letters addressed to high officials in India. The affidavit said that on 15 July 1984, Parmar urged the Koch Temple Congregation of Calgary, Alberta, to unite, fight and kill, to avenge the attack on the Golden Temple. Explosives and clocks. In April 1985, a Canadian familiar with blasting was asked by Rayot how much dynamite it would take to blow up a tree stump. Rayot was not shy about telling everyone he knew around Duncan about the need for revenge, or asking about explosives. Rayot sought cases of dynamite and did not care if he had to pay 3 times the normal price. He eventually confided it was not about stumps, but trouble in the old country. That he needed explosives to help my countrymen. One friend declined to get him dynamite, but did lend him a 400-page manual on mining with explosives. On 8 May 1985, Rayot bought a micron-to-digital automobile clock at the Radio Shack store in Duncan. Designed for a 12-volt automobile electrical system, it could also be powered by a 12-volt lantern battery. The 24-hour alarm activated a buzzer, but he returned a week later for an electrical relay after asking how to get the buzzer signal to power another device. Wiretappers recorded 9 telephone calls between Parmar's residence in Vancouver and Rayot from either his residence or workplace on Vancouver Island that month, which got Rayot added to the list of persons being monitored for terrorist activities. The Canadian government would later accuse Rayot of lying in 2003 when at first he said he did not know what 3 clocks he had bought could be used for. He later said Parmar needed an explosive device to blow up a bridge or something large in India, and that he needed timers for an explosive device. In that case, The relay could be used to trigger the detonator circuit for a blasting cap, which would provide the initial shock needed to detonate larger explosives such as dynamite. Rayet later visited a television repair shop with a partially disassembled car clock wired to a lantern battery. He needed help so that the buzzer stayed on rather than intermittently beeping, so that it would turn on a light in his camper to wake him up. The repairman knew his friend did not own a camper, and it would even strike Justice J. Raymond Paris at Rayet's 1991 trial as an odd use for a timer bomb tests. By mid-May, Rayet had gone into the woods to test a device with a 12-volt battery, cardboard cylinder, gunpowder, and some dynamite. But the device failed to work. The wooded area was in proximity to Duncan and Paldy. Later, Rayet acquired between 6 and 8 sticks of dynamite to blow up unidentified stumps if need be in the future from a Duncan well driller after visiting his house to fix a truck. He also obtained a few blasting caps days later. On the 31st of May 1985, Rayet brought his timer, attached to a boombox, into his shop so that his fellow employee at Duncan Auto Marine Electric could help him fix it for a friend, but he returned the radio after it did not work properly. On the 4th of June, CSIS agents Larry Lowe and Lynn McAdams followed Palmer and a youthful man as they went from Palmer's house to the Horseshoe Bay Ferry Terminal, rode the Nanaimo-bound ferry, and visited Rayet at his home and shop at Auto Marine Electric. The three drove to a deserted bush area, where Rayet was observed taking an object into the woods. Staying out of sight, the agents, who did not bring a camera, only heard an explosion which sounded like a loud gunshot. Later tests showed it could also have been an explosion, and later searchers turned up remnants of an aluminium electrical blasting cap. J.S. Warren, Director General of Counterterrorism at CSIS, would later ask on 16 July 1986 why they did not ask the police to stop and question the suspects, or search the vehicle, which might have deterred the bombing plot. The next day, Rayet purchased a large Sanyo component tuner, model FMT 611K, at Woolworths, and left his name and telephone number on the charge slip, which was later found in a search of his home. Rayet also bought smokeless gunpowder from a sporting goods store, signing I. Rayet on the explosives log. Study of debris from the Narita explosion would eventually show the bomb had been housed inside a Sanyo tuner with a serial number matching a model, sold only in British Columbia, and used a micron to clock as a timer which powered a relay with an ever-ready 12-volt battery to trigger blasting caps to set off a high explosive, consistent with sticks of dynamite, all matching items purchased by Rayet. This would lead to his eventual conviction. As late as 2010, Rayet admitted only to buying and assembling some parts, but denied he ever made a bomb, knew what the bomb was to be used for, who was behind any plot, or that he ever asked or knew the name of the man who he said stayed in his house for a week completing construction of the explosive device after his device failed. On 9 June 1985, a police informer in Hamilton reported that Palmer and Bagri had visited the Molten Sikh temple, warning the faithful that it would be unsafe to fly Air India. Vancouver police also monitored militants 11 days before the bombing. A leader of the International Sikh Youth Federation complained that no Indian consuls or ambassadors had yet been killed, but the response was, "You will see. Something will be done in 2 weeks." Tickets. The suspects in the bombing used payphones and talked in code. Translators' notes of wiretapped conversations include the following exchange between Talwinder Palmer and a follower named Hardeel Singh Johal on 20 June 1985, the day the tickets were purchased. Palmer: "Did you write the story?" Johal: "No, I didn't." Palmer: "Do that work first." This conversation appears to be an order from Palmer to book the airline tickets. It is believed that writing the story referred to purchasing the tickets. Afterward, Johil phoned Parmar back and asked if he could come over and read the story he asked for, to which Parmar agreed. Moments after the wiretapped conversation, at 100 GMT, a man calling himself Mr. Singh made reservations for 2 flights on the 22nd of June. One for Jaswant Singh to fly from Vancouver to Toronto on Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 086 and one for Mohinder Bell Singh to fly from Vancouver to Tokyo on Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 003 and connect to Air India Flight 301 to Bangkok. At 2:20 GMT on the same day, another call changed the reservation in the name of Jaswant Singh from CP086 to CP060, also flying from Vancouver to Toronto. The caller further requested to be put on the waiting list for AI 181 from Toronto to Montreal and AI 182 from Montreal to Bombay. The next day, at 19:10 GMT, a man wearing a turban paid for the 2 tickets with $3,005 in cash at a CP ticket office in Vancouver. The names on the reservations were changed. Jaswant Singh became M. Singh and Mohinder Bell Singh became L. Singh. The reservation and purchase of these tickets together would be used as evidence to link the 2 flights as one plot, despite some claims that it was only a coincidence. One telephone number left as a contact was Vancouver's Ross Street Sikh Temple. Johil was an avid follower of Talwinder Singh Parmar, and thus closely scrutinized in the investigation following the Air India bombing. He was alleged to have stored the suitcase explosives in the basement of a Vancouver school and to have purchased the tickets for the flights on which the bombs were placed. Mandip Singh Grewal recounted how he saw and recognized Johil as his school's janitor when he said goodbye to his father, one of the Flight 182 victims, at the airport on the day of the bombing. Rayat went to work on the 21st of June. Phone records show he called Johil at 7:17 p.m. A witness, whose name was protected, testified that Bagri asked to borrow her car the night before the bombing to take some suitcases to the airport, though he himself would not be flying with them.